I remember everybody thinking LeBron was going to go to maybe L.A. or New York. I mean, Knicks fans were just psyched up.
I thought he was headed to Chicago. I remember predicting that. Yeah.
There were so many different places, and then all of a sudden Miami comes in, and then we have this whole idea of a super team. Chris Bosh decides to come, Dwayne Wade decides to come, and then Miami goes from Dwayne Wade was already there, but
right.
having already won a championship in 2006 when I remember that 2006 final. It looked like it was over about halfway through the fourth quarter, game 3, when it looked like the Heat were going down 3-0. They come back, they win that championship unexpected with Pat Riley coming back to get his final ring as a head coach. Now they have what you would think is a dynasty. I remember when they had that party. Remember, and like everybody's there and they were dancing, and LeBron is saying, how many championships are we going to win in a row? Only wound up winning 2.
Yeah, they only won 2, and they got upset in one of the biggest upsets I've ever seen against the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, a reversal of 2006.
Yeah, and again, but still, like, even judging it was Dirk Nowitzki and a lot of older guys on that team. It wasn't really like they were all in their prime. It wasn't like they had that other team. And let's not forget, they also beat the Thunder to get there, too, who was one of the best teams in the league as well. I remember picking them. I think I had them winning it all that year or going to the finals, and I was shocked when Dallas did it. I was happy, though, for Dirk, though.
Absolutely.
At that time. And it was really impressive what he was able to put together, and a lot of those role players able to put together against LeBron. But again, you could also tell the pressure was still on LeBron at that time. And then after that, again, he played well, but he just wasn't good enough for the team. And obviously the Mavericks won, and then after that they won their 2, and that's it.
Yeah, and then they lose to the Spurs. Really, they should have lost to the Spurs twice. If you remember.
Kawhi Leonard makes the free throws, right?
Yeah, and Ray Allen hits the 3 because of the offensive rebound. I believe by Chris Bosh that he got it.
It was Chris Bosh. I think it was over. Was it Tiago Splitter? I think it was over.
Yeah, you kind of. I mean, I remember watching that game thinking, oh, well, here we go again. But you don't realize getting through the West back then, when you think of what Dirk had to go through, getting through the Spurs, getting through the Lakers early on in the 2000s, and then a little bit later dealing with Oklahoma, there was always a great team out there in the West. I remember one year, the year Dallas didn't make it with Dirk, when they won like 70 games.
Oh, 2007. They lost to the We Believe
games.
Warriors. Yep.
Yeah, one of the only times one lost to an 8.
Yeah,
the year after they won what year after they were in the finals and wound up losing to the Heat.
Yeah, I think the only other one I remember, besides I think there were 2 others that I remember, one of which was bound to happen because Derrick Rose got hurt for the Bulls, and they lost to the 76ers in 2012.
Right.
The only other one I remember was the Grizzlies over the Spurs in 2010. I think that same year that Dallas won, the Grizzlies beat the Spurs in the first round, and we actually had their play-by-play announcer, Eric Hasseltine, on an interview a couple weeks ago, and he was going through a lot of the adrenaline of those games, broadcasting those games. It was a lot of fun, and again, it was one of the most impressive things I saw because the Spurs were just so good. It seemed like they were unbeatable unless you had those superstars. And that was very impressive in itself. But again, you're right. It rarely happens in the NBA playoffs. And I don't know about you, but I've always advocated for the NBA to adopt more of an NFL playoff style and play 6 teams because think about this. Load management is becoming a big thing in the NBA, So why not reward the players by getting a bye if you do end up getting a 1 or 2 seed? I always thought the NFL playoff format in the NBA would be good for that reason. Keep the series going. Give the players the load management they want because a lot of these 8 seeds and 7 seeds are under 500.
Yeah, I mean, what I remember is in '94 when the Sonics just blew out the Nuggets the first 2 games, and Nuggets coming back to win that series, the very first 8 beating 1. And of course the Knicks in '99 going all the way to the finals.
Yes.
But again, they played the Heat, they were perfectly matched up against the Heat. After they lost in '97 with the fight with Charlie Ward and P.J. Brown, '98 they beat him as a 7 seed, '99 they beat him as an 8 seed. And 2000, they beat them. Miami had home field advantage in all of those series, losing a Game 5 in 98, 99, and Game 7 in 2000 at Miami. So that was just because the Knicks matched up so well with Miami. But it usually really doesn't happen, a 1 beating an 8. And I think that's what all for the first round now became markedly improved after that happened, where a team like Golden State, which was and also ran kind of during the season, and they beat them easy. If you remember that series, they kind of blew them out of those games. Right. And that was the end of Avery Johnson, who wound up going to Alabama, and now he's not even at Alabama anymore.
They got Nate Oates now.
Yeah.
From
So
Buffalo,
So I think that watching LeBron and watching, you're getting back to what we were talking about before, about the decision. Okay, when LeBron went to Miami, that was going to be kind of like what Jordan was with the Bulls in the 90s. They were going to be, LeBron himself has been in the finals every year except for last year, going back to 2010. But just the fact that he brought such a change to this new dream team. We can hold out, we can create our own team by sitting out and by all becoming free agents, something I don't think ever would have been done. Imagine Larry Bird coming and saying, hey, Magic, what do you think about it? No way.
Right.
They wanted to beat each other.
Right. Errol mentions it all the time. Everybody hated each other at that time, so they wanted to keep going with those types of rivalries. And the thing with the NBA is there still wasn't parity to the extent that other sports have. They still had, in the 80s, outside of the Sixers and the Pistons, every title was won by the Lakers or the Celtics. So you didn't really have much parity. Sometimes you had different opponents, sure, but you didn't have much parity. And then in the 90s, obviously, you had Jordan winning 6 titles, and the Rockets, in the 2 years Jordan wasn't there, winning the other 2. So it's not like you really had much difference when it comes to that. But yeah, you're definitely changing free agency the way it is. And again, a lot of the strict guidelines that we had with tampering back in the day, they're loosened up now. I don't know if they should get ruled completely. I don't know if that's kind of the thing, but it seems like a lot of players are illegally tampering now without us even knowing.
Right. I think another thing I'd like to talk about is getting into the baseball season. Right now, with the agreement ending between the players and the owners. Okay, we all know what happened in '94, and I definitely see that coming to a head and could happen again.
Really?
At the end of because there's so much difference between the two. I mean, they barely agreed during a time of national emergency where everybody kind of can think, hey, let's do the best thing for the country and get back to playing. They still were fighting then over who's more of the victims, the billionaire owners or the millionaire players. And the owners created all of this by paying these guys this money. It's not like the players forced them to pay them all this money. I mean, the owners decided to make that decision. Anytime the owners have tried to cut back and lower salaries, I don't know if you remember, in '87 there was a collusion. They actually were rewarded, the players were rewarded in a courtroom that the owners conspired to collude and to not offer the big-time free agents in '87 big contracts.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, Andre Dawson, Andre Scalabro, Andre Dawson wound up coming from the Expos to the Cubs and signed for like half of what he normally would have. Tim Raines actually sat out till May as a free agent, and then he wound up re-signing with the Expos. Wow. So a lot of that was the owners trying to get control of it again, and then it just gets out of control. You pay A-Rod $250 million, you pay Brian Harper all this money. So I mean, it gets absolutely ridiculous. So the owners have no one to blame but themselves.
Yeah, and I think, too, what you're looking at is, in a sport without a salary cap, I know they have the luxury tax, but in a sport without a salary cap, you have to anticipate that they were losing some of the same percentages anyway. And this is what I said many times on Twitter about why I was siding with the players for the most part, is that the owners are going to lose a similar percentage per team. If you're a middle market team, a low market team, it's going to be similar percentage lost. And again, I don't think 60%, 70% that the players were asking for was unreasonable. So it was surprising to me in that instance too. So that's why I ended up siding with the players in that instance. So I'm surprised that the players ended up taking this type of deal, but it seems like they really did want to play, which I guess wasn't the case in '94 until obviously they started. What did they start? June of '95 the next season?
No, they wound up starting at the end of April.
Okay.
Because I remember the Mets playing the Rockies in the first game, and
that was the first game at Coors Field.
Yeah, Dante Bichette hitting a walk-off homer of the beleaguered Mets bullpen. It never ends. Yeah.
Against a 2-year expansion franchise in a new state.
Yeah, way to go. That was Dallas Green and company back then. So I think that it's great to have baseball back, but this is kind of like the storm on the horizon. I think that the owners want a salary cap. I think a lot of the reasons you say make sense. And we're going into 17 straight years of record profits for the MLB and these owners. So it's not like, Major League Baseball has taken a step back, I think, as far as the fan base, because not many people watch. If you look at baseball's ratings, it doesn't rate with football. It doesn't rate
No, and I don't think it ever will.
Yeah, so it's not like they can go and say, hey, look at what all the success we're having with the fans. I think, though, as far as the TV contracts, with the networks, and some of the money that the fans are spending on jerseys and stuff like that, or attendance really hasn't been lacking either. So they're at a popular spot now. They don't want to go back to where they were in 95, 96, before that home run race in 98, where people take a while to come back to the game. Because if they do that, if they sit out, if they waste any more time, I don't think people are going to come back. There's too many other things for them to do now. Well,
now here's the thing I will counter with, though. Being that a lot of players are getting paid younger right away, we saw it with Acuna, we saw it with Eloy Jimenez.
And Albies.
Albies, yeah. We saw it with a lot of different cases. Do you think that kind of thing would still happen with, again, the majority of these other types of players? Now, the ones getting hindered by this are the veteran players that maybe had past success and aren't getting paid because now general managers are looking at future projections, what it could be, so they're not paying guys as much. That's why guys like Mike Moustakas have lingered in free agency a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Now, with that kind of thing happening, could you still see like a whole majority of players striking, though, too, if they don't like this setup in terms of the season?
I think that the players always have the power because, I mean, if you remember in 95, what they tried to do is put replacement players in, and that did not work. I mean, it eventually got the players back, but the replacement players who were brought in were basically laughed out of the business. And, I mean, the Major League players never really accepted them. You had some guys like Rick Reed sticking around and becoming part of a roster, but they never really forgave them, as far as taking part in that. So the owners can say what they want, but if the players aren't going to negotiate and come back down to where the owners want to, and they won't, and they shouldn't, that's going to create a standoff. And it's kind of who's going to blink first, and it's always going to be the owners because they cannot exist without the players. And you know what? They created the problem themselves.
Well, I also think, too, it's GMs also to an extent. I don't think the owners want to spend any more than what we know them to spend. We know what the high market teams are that'll spend when they get good. We know the high market teams that'll spend even if they're not good. They'll just spend anyway. Mm-hmm. So it also is GMs to an extent, too, in terms of what I was saying earlier. They want to pay for future projections. They want to pay for analytics. And a lot of these other players, these older players that might have more power, they may end up losing a little bit of leverage there, too. So to an extent, the owners have an advantage in that way. But you're right. It's still going to be the players. And, again, I think because of what we were talking about with the NBA earlier, ironically, other players in other sports want to have that kind of power, but it's a little different the way it's set up. Now, like I said, I think baseball still has a lot of issues just because they don't have a salary cap, so it's obvious where these guys are going to go all the time. Mm-hmm. Whereas, again, the NFL has a salary cap, so there's no obvious free agent destinations. Obviously, there's going to be preferences with good teams and stuff, but good teams change all the time, too, especially in the NFC where there's a lot of parity. So they want to be like basketball players to an extent, but that's going to be harder. And as a result, while somebody else, like we were mentioning earlier with Bryce Harper, he might get $300 million. Some other teammate on the Phillies that maybe could get more ends up getting a discount. So that makes it harder and makes it more top heavy in that instance. So it's interesting that the players union is going to approach it like that too. And you wonder who has the most power there.
Right. And I think and the last thing I'd like to talk about, you guys talked about it earlier on the show, is Cam Newton going to the Patriots. Belichick gets caught with another thing, taping a game between the Bengals and the Browns, was it? Or
no, it was back-to-back weeks. They played the Browns, and they played the Bengals, and I think they practiced with the Browns or something, some joint practice, and they're obviously both in the same state. It was the week before they were playing the Bengals. Maybe they just played the Browns or something like that, but it was caught in those venues.
Okay. I mean, Belichick doing, stretching the rules is nothing new. So a lot of people think he gets a slap on the wrist, but the Patriots have continued excellence. How many straight, the last time they didn't win the AFC East was 2008.
Yeah, the year Brady tore his ACL by Bernard Pollard in the first week of the season.
Right, and then you had the Dolphins winning the division for crying out loud.
On a tiebreaker, too. Remember, the Patriots and Dolphins were both 11-5.
Yeah.
So it took, a division tiebreaker or a conference tiebreaker or something like that.
It did.
I don't remember, but yeah, that was the last time they did not win. Now, do you think the punishment was good? You think it was, or
I think it doesn't matter.
Even as a repeat offender, though.
I don't think it matters. I mean, they could. The only way you really punish New England is if you take away a consistent amount of first-round picks. Taking around a third-round pick in 2021, it don't matter. They're going to replace it within 2 trades anyway.
With compensation picks a lot of the time too. That's why I think too you have to, especially being a repeat offender, maybe at least do a first-round pick